The clinking of silverware against fine china is the only sound that dares to cut through the thick, suffocating silence. It's Thanksgiving, a day meant for gratitude and warmth. But the air in my parents' dining room is colder than the November chill outside. 20 pairs of eyes are fixed on me, a mix of confusion, pity, and nervous anticipation. Across the long mahogany table, my fiancé, Liam, sits frozen, his knuckles white as he grips his wine glass. Beside him, my twin sister, Chloe, looks down at her plate of untouched turkey, her usually vibrant face pale and drawn. They both know what's coming. They've been dreading this moment for 2 weeks. I rise slowly from my chair, the damask napkin slipping from my lap onto the plush carpet. I pick up my glass, filled to the brim with sparkling cranberry juice, though everyone here assumes it's wine. A faint, humorless smile touches my lips. I just wanted to say a few words. I begin, my voice deceptively calm. There's so much to be thankful for this year. Liam flinches, a barely perceptible tremor that only I would notice. Chloe's shoulders hunch forward, as if bracing for a physical blow. I'm thankful for family. I continue, my gaze sweeping over my parents, my aunts, my uncles, all blissfully unaware of the storm I'm about to unleash. And I'm thankful for love, for commitment. My eyes lock with Liam's. His handsome face, the one I traced in my dreams 1,000 times, is now a mask of pure terror. And most of all, I say, my voice dropping to a near whisper that carries across a silent room, I'm thankful for the truth, because it really does set you free. I raise my glass. I have a few special people to thank for showing me that. The screen fades to black, the echo of my words hanging in the air like a death sentence. 2 weeks earlier, my world was a masterpiece of autumnal bliss. Portland, Oregon, was showing off its best colors, a vibrant canvas of gold, crimson, and burnt orange. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, smelling of damp earth and wood smoke. Liam and I had just bought our first home, a charming little craftsman bungalow in the Laurelhurst neighborhood. Its bones were good, but it was a fixer-upper, a project we had thrown ourselves into with the same passionate energy that defined our relationship. Our life was a series of perfect, Instagram-worthy moments: Saturdays spent at the farmer's market, evenings huddled by the fireplace with blueprints spread across the floor, and lazy Sunday mornings in bed, planning a future that seemed as bright and solid as the Douglas firs in our backyard. Liam was an architect, and I was an interior designer. We were a cliché, the perfect creative couple. He designed the spaces, and I brought them to life. Our house was our ultimate collaboration, a testament to our shared vision. He was everything I had ever wanted: ambitious, kind, with a smile that could melt the persistent Oregon drizzle. When he proposed 6 months ago on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, with a simple, elegant ring he'd designed himself, I felt like the final piece of my life's puzzle had clicked into place. For the first time, I wasn't just Chloe's sister. I was Ava, a woman on the verge of having it all. Chloe was my twin, fraternal, not identical, a fact she loved to point out as if it explained everything. While I inherited her mother's quiet introspection and love for muted colors, Chloe was a vibrant explosion of our father's charisma. She was a star, the one who commanded every room she entered. She worked in PR, a job that was perfectly suited to her natural ability to charm and persuade. Growing up, I had always lived in her shadow. She was the one who won the student council elections, the one who was crowned prom queen, the one whose adventures were always more exciting than mine. I loved her. Of course, she was my sister, but there was always a tiny, persistent sliver of competition between us, a silent current running beneath the surface of our love. She would visit our new house often, striding in with a bottle of expensive wine and a barrage of well-meaning, but slightly condescending advice. "Oh, Ava, honey, are you sure about that shade of gray? It's a little somber, don't you think?" she'd say, tilting her head. "You need something with more life." She'd compliment my engagement ring, then immediately follow it up with a story about a friend whose fiancé had bought a diamond, twice the size. It was her way of reminding me, and perhaps herself, that she was still one step ahead. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just Chloe being Chloe. Liam would just laugh it off, pulling me close and whispering, "She's just jealous you snagged the best architect in Portland." I'd lean into him, wanting to believe it was that simple. I was so wrapped up in the beautiful life we were building that I chose to see only the good. I was planning our wedding, a small, intimate affair at a vineyard in the Willamette Valley. The save-the-dates were already sent, and my dress was hanging in my mother's closet. Everything was perfect. Almost too perfect. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't a sign at all, but a feeling. A deep, bone-weary exhaustion that settled over me in the afternoons. At first, I blamed it on the renovation. We were sanding floors, painting walls, and making endless trips to the hardware store. Then came the nausea. A faint, rolling wave that would hit me every morning as I drank my coffee. And then, I realized my period was late. A week late. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood in the bright, sterile aisle of the pharmacy, staring at the rows of pregnancy tests. It seemed so surreal. A baby wasn't part of our immediate 5-year plan. We talked about it, of course, but always in a vague, someday kind of way. But as I picked up a box, a different feeling began to bloom in my chest, pushing aside the initial panic. It was a fragile, fluttering hope. A baby. Our baby. A new project. A new life to bring into our perfect home. Back in the pristine, half-finished bathroom of our house, I followed the instructions with trembling hands. The 3 minutes I had to wait felt like an eternity. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the little plastic stick on the counter as if my gaze alone could will the right answer into existence. I closed my eyes and pictured Liam's face, imagining the moment I would tell him. I could see his eyes widening in surprise, then crinkling at the corners as that beautiful smile spread across his face. He would lift me up, spinning me around in the middle of our dusty, unfinished living room. When I finally summoned the courage to look, it was there. Not one line, but two clear, undeniable pink lines. A breath I didn't even know I was holding escaped my lungs in a shaky sob. It wasn't a sob of sadness or fear, but of an overwhelming, heart-stopping joy. It was real. This was happening. A tiny, secret life was growing inside of me, a product of our love. It was the most perfect, most wonderful secret in the world. This wasn't just a piece of the puzzle anymore. It was the picture itself, complete and whole. It cemented everything. It made our future tangible. My mind immediately started racing. I had to tell him. But how? I couldn't just blurt it out over dinner. This news deserved something special. A moment that would be etched into our memories forever. I wanted to see the pure, unadulterated joy on his face. This secret was mine for now. A warm, glowing ember in my chest. My plan formed quickly. I drove to a little boutique downtown, my hand still shaking slightly on the steering wheel. I found the tiniest pair of soft, cream-colored baby shoes. They were so small, so perfect. I bought a beautiful, silver-plated gift box and some silk ribbon. Back home, I carefully placed a positive pregnancy test inside the box, nestled it between the two tiny shoes, and tied the ribbon into a perfect bow. It was the most important gift I would ever give him. He was working late at the office, trying to meet a deadline. It was the perfect opportunity. I'd have time to set everything up. I'd cook his favorite meal, light some candles, and put on the jazz music he loved. When he walked in, tired from a long day, I would hand him the box. It would be our moment. The afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. I stood in our soon-to-be kitchen, the gift box sitting on the counter, a silent promise of the life to come. I felt a surge of love for Liam so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. He was my rock, my partner, my future. And soon, he would be the father of my child. Nothing in the world could ever tarnish this feeling. Nothing could ever break what we had. I was so sure of it. As sure as I was of the two pink lines that had changed my life forever. I ran a hand over my still flat stomach. A protective, instinctive gesture. "Hello, you," I whispered to the empty room. "Your daddy is going to be so happy to meet you." The silence of the house seemed to hum with my happiness. It was a foolish, naive thought. A beautiful lie I told myself just before my world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The quiet before the storm wasn't quiet at all. It was just me, refusing to hear the thunder that was already rumbling in the distance. I spent the next hour in a happy daze, prepping vegetables for a risotto, Liam's favorite. I imagined our life years from now. A little boy with his father's eyes, or a little girl with my smile running through these very rooms. We'd host Thanksgiving here one day. In this house we built together. Our kids would chase each other around the big dining table, and Liam and I would exchange knowing glances. Our hearts full. I was so lost in my daydream that I barely registered the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I glanced at the clock. It was too early for Liam to be home. A flicker of confusion passed through me. I walked to the front window and peeked through the blinds. It was Chloe's sleek white SUV. A smile touched my lips. This was even better. I could share my news with my sister first. She would be the first person in the world to know. After me, she would shriek with excitement, hug me tightly, and we'd jump up and down like little girls again. Maybe we could even plan a way to tell Liam together. I quickly hid the gift box in a cupboard, wanting to savor the reveal. I opened the front door just as she was walking up the steps, her phone pressed to her ear. She looked different. Her usual confident stride was replaced by a kind of furtive haste. She was wearing a trench coat, which was odd since it wasn't raining. "Chloe." "Hey." I called out, my voice bright with excitement. She jumped, startled, and quickly ended her call. "Ava, I didn't know you'd be home," she stammered, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "I thought you were meeting a client this afternoon. It got rescheduled," I said, ushering her inside. "I'm so glad you're here. I have the most amazing news." "Oh." She avoided my eyes, her gaze darting around the half-finished living room. "Is everything okay? You seem flushed." "Everything is more than okay." I laughed, my happiness bubbling over. "It's perfect." "That's great," she said, her voice strained. "Listen, I can't stay long. I left my favorite scarf here the other day, and I wanted to grab it." "Your scarf?" I frowned. "I didn't see it. Where did you leave it?" I think it might be in your bedroom," she said, still not looking at me. "I was helping you pick out curtain fabrics. Remember?" The excuse was flimsy. I didn't remember her being in our bedroom, but I was too caught up in my own joy to question it. "Oh, sure. Go ahead and look. I'll make us some tea. You have to stay for a few minutes. I'm dying to tell you my secret." She gave me a tight, forced smile. "Okay, just for a minute." She hurried up the stairs, and I went into the kitchen, my mind already rehearsing the words. "You're going to be an aunt," I'd say, and her face would light up. We'd be close again. Truly close. Bonded by this new life. The small, petty rivalries of our past would melt away. This baby would fix everything. I put the kettle on, my back to the staircase. I heard her footsteps overhead, moving around in our bedroom. A few moments passed. Then, I heard another sound. A low murmur. A man's voice. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. Liam was at work. He texted me an hour ago from his office. I must be imagining it. It was probably the wind, or the old house settling. But the voice came again. Clearer this time. It was muffled, but unmistakable. It was his voice. Liam's voice. The kettle began to whistle. A shrill, piercing scream that seemed to mock the sudden, terrifying silence in my heart. I turned off the stove, my movements slow and robotic. What was he doing home? And why was he whispering with my sister in my bedroom in the middle of a weekday afternoon? An explanation tried to form in my logical, trusting mind. Maybe he came home early to surprise me. Maybe Chloe was helping him plan something for me. A pre-wedding gift. Perhaps. Yes. That had to be it. It was a silly, innocent secret. I was being paranoid. I forced a smile back onto my face and walked out of the kitchen. "Everything okay out there?" I called out, my voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Silence. "Liam, is that you? Did you come home early?" More silence. A heavy, guilty silence that answered my question more loudly than any words could. My heart started to pound a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. The happy, sun-drenched world I had been living in just moments before began to tilt on its axis. I started up the stairs, my feet feeling like lead. Each step was a lifetime. The hallway at the top was dim, the only light coming from the window at the far end. The door to our bedroom, my bedroom, was slightly ajar. I told myself to turn around, to go back downstairs and pretend I hadn't heard anything, to protect the perfect picture I had painted in my mind. But my body wouldn't obey. Some morbid, self-destructive force propelled me forward. I reached the door, my hand hovering over the cool brass knob. I could still hear them inside, not talking anymore. But the sounds were even more damning. The soft rustle of fabric. A sigh. My breath hitched in my throat. I pushed the door open, and my world ended. It wasn't a dramatic, cinematic scene. There was no screaming, No shattering glass, just a quiet, horrifying tableau that burned itself onto my memory with the searing finality of a branding iron. Liam and Chloe. My Liam. My Chloe. They were tangled together in the sheets of my bed. The bed I shared with him. The bed where I had woken up that very morning feeling sick and tired and unknowingly, deliriously happy. Chloe's trench coat was crumpled on the floor, and Liam's work shirt was hanging carelessly off the corner of my antique vanity chair. The room, our sanctuary, was suddenly foreign and profane. They didn't see me at first. My hand was still on the doorknob, my body paralyzed in the doorway. It was the sound of my sharp, ragged intake of breath that finally alerted them. Liam's head whipped around, his eyes wide with a kind of primal panic I had never seen before. Chloe let out a small, strangled gasp and scrambled to pull the duvet up to her chin, a laughably modest gesture given the circumstances. The silence in the room was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air, all the life, out of my lungs. I just stood there, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. It was like watching a movie, a sick, twisted drama that had nothing to do with me. This wasn't my fiancé. This wasn't my twin sister. These were to strangers, to monsters who had stolen their faces. Then, the gift box I was still clutching in my hand slipped from my numb fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a soft, dull thud, the silver lid popping off. One of the tiny, cream-colored baby shoes rolled out, coming to a stop just inches from the discarded pile of their clothes. It was that small detail that broke the spell. The sight of that tiny shoe, a symbol of a future that had just been murdered, sent a jolt of pure, unadulterated pain through me. It was a physical sensation, a white-hot knife twisting in my gut. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The shock was too profound, the betrayal too deep for something as simple as tears. Ava, Liam breathed, his voice a hoarse whisper. He started to move, to get out of the bed, but he seemed to forget he was naked, and stopped, looking utterly pathetic and exposed. Chloe just hid her face in her hands, her blonde hair falling around her like a shroud. Her shoulders were shaking, but I didn't know if it was from sobs or from fear. At that moment, I didn't care. I didn't say a word. I didn't look at them again. I tore my gaze away from the wreckage of my life, from the tiny shoe on the floor, and I turned around. My movements were stiff and robotic, like an old automaton winding down. I walked back down the stairs, one deliberate step at a time, my hand trailing along the wall to keep myself steady. I could hear them scrambling behind me, the frantic rustling of clothes, their panicked, whispered calls of my name. Ava, wait, please, let me explain. Liam pleaded. Ava, I'm so sorry. It's not what you think. Chloe cried. It's not what you think. The absurdity of that phrase was almost comical. What, exactly, did she think I was thinking? That they were in my bed, naked, in the middle of the afternoon, to discuss curtain fabrics? I didn't stop. I walked straight to the front door, pulled it open, and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. The world outside looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes ago. The leaves were still golden. The sky was still a pale, hazy blue. But everything felt different. The colors seemed garish and fake. The air felt thin and unbreathable. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away without a single glance in the rearview mirror. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. I couldn't be in that house. My house, which now felt like nothing more than a crime scene. The first few hours are a blur. I remember driving aimlessly through the winding roads of the West Hills, the tires crunching over fallen leaves. Jazz music was still playing softly on the car radio, a haunting soundtrack to my personal apocalypse. At some point, I pulled over into a scenic viewpoint overlooking the city. I sat there for a long time, staring at the skyline of Portland, the city where I had planned to build my life, raise my family. Now, it just looked like a collection of buildings, cold and indifferent. My phone started buzzing incessantly in my purse, a relentless barrage of calls and texts. Liam, Chloe, Liam, Chloe. I ignored it. The sound a hateful intrusion into the dead silence that had enveloped me. The numbness was a strange kind of shield, a blessing. It held the pain at bay, keeping it from overwhelming me completely. I knew it was there, waiting, a giant, black wave cresting just on the horizon of my consciousness. But for now, I was just empty. Finally, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple that felt like a personal insult. I knew I couldn't just sit there forever. I needed to go somewhere. Not home. Never home again. There was only one person I could think of. Maya. My best friend since college. She was the opposite of Chloe in every way, grounded, fiercely loyal, and incapable of deceit. She lived in a cozy apartment in the Hawthorne district, a vibrant, bohemian neighborhood filled with quirky shops and colorful murals. It felt like a world away from the manicured lawns and quiet streets of Laurelhurst. When I showed up on her doorstep, I must have looked like a ghost. My face was pale. My eyes were wide and vacant. I hadn't cried yet. The tears were lodged somewhere deep in my chest. A solid, painful lump. She opened the door and her warm, smiling face immediately fell. Ava? Oh my God. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and strange. I saw my sister. She pulled me inside without another word, wrapping me in a hug that felt like the first real thing I had experienced in hours. It was only then, in the safety of her arms, in the warmth of her little apartment that smelled of sandalwood and old books, that the dam finally broke. The black wave I had been holding back crashed over me, and I began to sob. It wasn't a quiet, dignified cry. It was a raw, ugly, guttural sound of a creature in agony. I cried for my stolen future, for my murdered love, for the sister I had lost, and for the tiny, innocent life inside of me that was now tethered to this monstrous betrayal. Maya just held me, letting me cry until I was exhausted, until there were no more tears left, only dry, shuddering breaths. She didn't press me for details. She just made me a cup of chamomile tea, wrapped me in a thick, fluffy blanket, and sat with me on her couch as darkness fell outside. Later that night, after I had calmed down enough to speak, I told her everything, every single, sordid detail, from the moment I saw Chloe's car to the tiny baby's shoe rolling across the floor. Maya listened in horrified silence, her expression shifting from shock to disbelief, and finally, to a cold, hard fury that was almost frightening to see on her normally gentle face. I'm going to kill them, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I swear to God, Ava, I will drive over there right now, and I will end them both. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's not worth it. What are you going to do? She asked, her anger softening into concern. I don't know, I admitted. And it was the truest thing I had ever said. I have no idea what to do. My phone, which I had finally silenced and tossed onto her coffee table, lit up again. It was a text from Chloe. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. Ava, please, you have to let me explain. It was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. I was lonely. I'd had too much to drink last night. It didn't mean anything. Please don't throw away everything we have over this. I love you. A mistake. She called it a mistake, as if it were a wrong turn on the freeway or a spilled cup of coffee. And then, the audacity to say I love you. The words were like poison. Hot, white anger, an emotion I had never truly felt before, began to burn through the fog of my grief. It was sharp and clarifying. It felt powerful. Then a message from Liam came through. My love. My Ava. I am so sorry. I can't explain what happened. It was a moment of insanity. A complete betrayal of everything I hold sacred. But my love for you is real. You are my life. We can get through this. Please, just talk to me. I will do anything. Anything. To make this right. Anything. He would do anything. The words echoed in my mind. He was desperate. He was guilty. And for the first time since I had walked in on them, I felt a flicker of something other than pain or rage. It was a cold, calculated thought. An idea, dark and vengeful, began to take root in the barren soil of my broken heart. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the quiet, forgiving one. Ava, the peacemaker, the one who always smoothed things over. They had counted on my tears, on my heartbreak. They had probably already concocted a story, a narrative where they were the flawed, tragic figures and I was the gentle, wounded party who would eventually, through the goodness of my heart, find a way to forgive them. They were wrong. I looked at Maya, my eyes no longer vacant, but gleaming with a new, unsettling light. What's the date today? I asked. It's the 10th of November, she said, looking at me with concern. Why? That means Thanksgiving isn't 2 weeks. I said, my voice steady. Okay, she said slowly, clearly confused. And a slow, chilling smile spread across my face. It felt foreign on my own lips. And this year, I said, the plan crystallizing in my mind. The whole family is getting together at my parents' house. Liam's parents will be there too. It's going to be a big celebration. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over Liam's name. He said he would do anything to make it right. I think I'm going to take him up on that offer. Maya just stared at me. Ava, what are you planning? They want a second chance, I said, my voice hardening. They want forgiveness. Fine. I'll give them a stage to earn it. The biggest stage they could possibly imagine. And I'm going to make sure it's a performance no one in our family will ever forget. The quiet, heartbroken victim was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone colder, stronger, and far more dangerous. They had destroyed my world, but they had also unleashed a part of me I never knew existed. They wanted me to play a role in their drama of forgiveness. Little did they know, I was no longer an actor. I was the director, and I was about to rewrite the entire script. The next few days were a masterclass in self-control. I didn't answer their calls, but I read every single one of their desperate, pleading texts. They were a symphony of excuses, blame shifting, and self-pity. Chloe blamed her lifelong jealousy of me, a confession that was both pathetic and insulting. She said being with Liam was a twisted way of trying to feel what it was like to be me for a moment. Liam blamed the stress of the wedding and his work, a moment of weakness, a cry for help. They were painting themselves as tragic victims of their own flaws, and I was just collateral damage. Each message, instead of softening my heart, only hardened my resolve. I let them stew in their own guilt and fear for a full week. I let them wonder if I had disappeared off the face of the earth. I stayed with Maya, who became my silent co-conspirator. She watched me with a mixture of awe and worry, as I methodically began to untangle my life from Liam's. I contacted a lawyer, just for a consultation. I told myself, I started looking at apartments online. I was building an escape route, a life raft, while they were still drowning in the mess they had created. Finally, after 7 days of silence, I decided it was time to respond. I sent a short, simple text to Liam. We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop by your office. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come alone. The reply came back in less than 10 seconds. Yes. Of course. Thank you. Thank you. Ava. He was grateful. The thought made me sick. He was grateful that I was granting him an audience, as if he were a lowly subject and I were a queen. As I lay in bed in my spare room that night, I placed a hand on my stomach. The baby was my secret, my anchor. They didn't know about this tiny life yet. It was the one part of me they hadn't touched, hadn't tainted. It was my secret weapon. This baby wasn't a reason to stay and forgive. It was a reason I had to burn everything to the ground. For this child, who deserved a mother who was a warrior, not a doormat. For this child, who would never, ever know the man who was supposed to be his father. The coffee shop was a neutral, impersonal space, all polished concrete and the overwhelming scent of burnt espresso. It was a place for strangers, which felt fitting. Liam was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table in the corner, looking haggard. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his usually impeccable suit looked rumpled, as if he'd been sleeping in it. He jumped to his feet the moment he saw me, his face a pathetic mixture of hope and dread. Ava, he said, his voice cracking. Thank you for coming. I didn't respond. I just slid into the chair opposite him, placing my purse on the table between us like a barrier. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time since that day, I tried to find the man I loved, the man I had promised to spend my life with. But he was gone. In his place was a weak, desperate stranger whose face I just happened to know intimately. I know sorry isn't enough, he began, his hands fidgeting on the table. I know there are no words, no excuses I can fix what I did. It was the worst mistake of my life, Ava. A moment of insanity. It meant nothing. It meant nothing. I repeated, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. You slept with my sister, my twin sister, in our bed, in the house we were building together, and you have the audacity to tell me it meant nothing? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. No, that's not what I meant. I mean, she means nothing to me. It was a symptom of something else. The stress. The wedding. I felt like I was losing myself. And I did something stupid. Something unforgivable. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. But you, Ava, you are my life. Everything I have, everything I am, is because of you. Please, don't let this one horrible, idiotic moment destroy all of that. I let him talk. I let him spin his web of pathetic excuses and self-serving apologies. He spoke of his love for me, of our future, of the house. He was trying to appeal to the old Ava, the one who believed in second chances, the one who would do anything to keep the peace. But she was dead. He and Chloe had killed her. When he finally ran out of words, his desperate monologue trailing off into a heavy silence, I spoke. My voice was calm and measured, a chilling contrast to his emotional display. My parents are expecting us for Thanksgiving, I said, changing the subject so abruptly it clearly threw him off balance. What? He stammered. Thanksgiving. Ava, I don't think. My mother called me yesterday. I continued, cutting him off. She's so excited. She's already planning the menu. Your parents are coming. Everyone is looking forward to celebrating our engagement. Our new life? I paused, letting the words hang in the air. It would break her heart if we didn't show up. It would break both our families apart. He stared at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. This was not the conversation he had expected. He had prepared for tears, for screaming, for recriminations. He had not prepared for a discussion about holiday dinner plans. What are you saying? He asked slowly. I'm saying, I said, leaning forward slightly, that I am not ready to blow up to families because of your mistake. Not yet. I need to think. I need time. But I will not be the one to ruin Thanksgiving for everyone. I held his gaze, my expression unreadable. So here's the deal. We go to Thanksgiving. We sit at that table, and we pretend that everything is perfect. We smile. We laugh. We talk about the wedding. We give the performance of our lives. For them. A wave of relief washed over his face, so palpable it was nauseating. He saw a lifeline. He thought this was my way of offering him a path back, a way to sweep this under the rug. He thought I was choosing propriety over my own self-respect. Yes, he said, nodding eagerly. Yes, of course. Anything. We can do that. And after we can talk. We can go to therapy. We can do whatever it takes. I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Ava, I swear it. There's one more condition, I said, my voice like ice. Chloe has to be there too. And she has to play along. His face fell. Chloe? But wouldn't that be awkward? Awkward. A small, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Liam, we are so far past awkward we can't even see it in the rearview mirror. This is not about comfort. This is about appearances. She is my sister. If she's not there, people will ask questions. If she is there, and we are all pretending, then it reinforces the lie. It makes it stronger. I stood up, my chair scraping against the concrete floor. So you will talk to her. You will tell her the plan. You two created this mess together. You can work together to put on this little show for me. Do we have a deal? He looked up at me, a man completely lost, willing to grab onto any piece of wreckage to keep from drowning. Yes, he said, his voice hoarse. Deal. Good, I said. I'll see you on Thanksgiving. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, leaving him sitting there amidst the smell of burnt coffee and shattered promises. I felt a cold, satisfying sense of power. It wasn't happiness, not even close, but it was something. It was control. He thought he was getting a second chance. He had no idea he was walking into a trap, one that I was meticulously setting. Piece by piece. The next step was Chloe. I didn't give her the dignity of a face-to-face meeting. I sent her a text message that night. A simple, brutal command. Liam told you the plan. Be at Mom and Dad's on Thanksgiving. Don't be late. And don't even think about speaking to me before then. Her reply was instant, filled with the same pathetic gratitude as Liam's. I will. Thank you. Ava. I'm so sorry. I love you. I stared at the words I love you until they blurred. Love. They kept using that word. A word they had desecrated, turned into a weapon, and then tried to use as a bandage for the wound they had inflicted. The anger I felt was so pure, so potent. It almost felt cleansing. It burned away the last vestiges of my grief, leaving behind a core of diamond-hard resolve. The 2 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were the longest of my life. I stayed at Maya's, creating a cocoon for myself. I went to my first prenatal appointment alone. I sat in the darkened room, my heart pounding, as the doctor moved the ultrasound wand over my still flat stomach. And then, I heard it. A sound like a tiny, frantic hummingbird. A fast, strong heartbeat. My baby's heartbeat. Tears streamed down my face. But for the first time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of fierce, primal love. This was real. This tiny life was real. And it was mine. It was all mine. In that moment, any lingering doubt I had about my plan vanished. I wasn't just doing this for myself anymore. I was doing it for this child. To protect them from a world of lies and betrayal. To show them what strength looked like. I got a printed copy of the ultrasound picture. A grainy black and white image that was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I tucked it safely into my wallet. A secret talisman that gave me strength. During those 2 weeks, I systematically and quietly began to dismantle my life with Liam. I opened a new bank account and started moving my savings. I met with my lawyer again. This time not for a consultation, but to start drawing out the paperwork. I found a small, sunny 2-bedroom apartment for rent, just a few blocks from Maya. I signed the lease, my hand steady as I wrote my name, and my name alone, on the legal document. I was building my new world in the shadows, while Liam and Chloe were preparing their costumes for the final act of our old one. They would occasionally send me texts, trying to bridge the silence. Liam sent me a link to a couples counselor. Chloe sent me a picture of us as kids. A desperate, cloying attempt at nostalgia. I ignored them all. I was a ghost to them. A void. They were speaking into an empty room. Their words echoing back at them. Hollow and meaningless. The day before Thanksgiving, I packed a small overnight bag. I was going to my parents' house. To my childhood bedroom. It felt symbolic. A retreat to the person I was before Liam. Before this whole mess. As I packed, my mother called. "Ava, honey, are you okay?" she asked. Her voice laced with a mother's intuition. "You've been so quiet lately. Is everything all right with you and Liam?" "Everything's fine, Mom." I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Just busy with the house and work. We're really looking forward to tomorrow." "Oh, good," she said, sounding relieved. "Your father and I are so thrilled to have everyone together. It's going to be wonderful. Chloe will be there, too. It's so nice when my 2 girls are under the same roof." A cold knot formed in my stomach. My 2 girls. She had no idea. She had no idea that one of her girls had driven a knife into the other's back. The guilt of what I was about to do to my parents, the pain I was about to cause them, was the hardest part of the plan. It was a necessary casualty, a form of collateral damage I had to accept. Sometimes, a forest fire is the only way to clear the deadwood and allow for new growth. My family was about to burn. That night, sleeping in my old twin bed, surrounded by the ghosts of my teenage self, I felt a profound sense of loneliness. The righteous anger that had been fueling me for 2 weeks began to flicker, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Was I doing the right thing? Was this vengeful, destructive path truly the answer? I pulled the ultrasound picture from my wallet and looked at the tiny, blurry shape in the darkness. It was a promise, a reason. I wasn't just destroying a life. I was clearing the way for a new one. My child would not be born into a family built on a foundation of lies. They would be born into a world of truth, no matter how brutal that truth was. I held the picture to my chest, closed my eyes, and hardened my heart one last time. The performance was tomorrow, and I was ready for my curtain call. Thanksgiving morning dawned gray and drizzly, the sky weeping over Portland in a way that felt deeply appropriate. I stood in my childhood bedroom, staring at my reflection. I had chosen my outfit with the care of a warrior choosing their armor. A simple, elegant cashmere sweater in a soft cream color, dark tailored pants, and flat, sensible boots. I looked calm, put together, respectable. I was a picture of the happy, stable daughter, the blushing bride-to-be. It was the perfect disguise. Downstairs, the house was already bustling with a festive chaos. The scent of roasting turkey, sage, and cinnamon filled the air, a smell that had always meant safety and love to me. Today, it just smelled like hypocrisy. My mother, Carol, was a flurry of motion in the kitchen, her face flushed with happiness. My father, David, was in charge of greeting guests, his booming laugh echoing through the foyer. Aunts, uncles, and cousins were arriving, bringing with them pies, bottles of wine, and cheerful holiday chatter. It was a perfect Norman Rockwell painting, and I was about to slash the canvas to ribbons. Liam arrived right on time, looking like he'd been professionally groomed for the occasion. He wore a crisp blue shirt and a handsome sweater, a bouquet of autumn flowers in one hand and a bottle of expensive Pinot Noir in the other. He smiled, a tight, practiced expression, as he handed the gifts to my mother. He then walked over to me, his eyes searching my face for some sign of forgiveness, some crack in my icy facade. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice low so only I could hear. "Play your part, Liam," I whispered back, my voice so cold it made him physically recoil. I turned away from him and offered my father a bright, false smile. Then, Chloe arrived. She slipped in almost unnoticed, her usual vibrant energy completely extinguished. She was pale beneath her makeup, and she clutched a dish of over-sweetened cranberry sauce like a shield. She avoided my gaze, giving me a wide berth as she mumbled a greeting to our parents and scurried into the kitchen. The tension between the three of us was a palpable thing, a separate entity in the room that only we could feel. We were three actors on a stage, hyper-aware of each other's presence, while the audience remained blissfully ignorant. The hours leading up to dinner were a special kind of torture. I had to endure my Aunt Mary pinching my cheek and asking when we were going to give her some grandnieces or nephews. I had to watch as Liam charmed my father with a discussion about a new building project downtown. Worst of all, I had to watch my mother pull Chloe and me aside, her arms around both of us. "Oh, it does my heart good to see my girls together," she said, her eyes misty. "I know you'd have had your little rivalries over the years, but you're sisters. You're twins. That's a bond that can never be broken." I looked over Mom's shoulder, and my eyes met Chloe's. In them, I saw a flash of genuine pain, of desperate regret. For a fleeting second, I almost felt a pang of pity for her. She looked so small, so broken. But then I remembered the image of her in my bed with my fiancé, and the pity curdled into contempt. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. Liam's parents, the Hendersons, arrived soon after. They were kind, wealthy people who adored me. Mrs. Henderson hugged me tightly, telling me how they couldn't wait to officially call me their daughter. The irony was so thick I felt like I was choking on it. Liam stood beside us, smiling his fake smile, accepting their praise. He was a fraud, and I was his accomplice. Finally, my mother called everyone to the dining room. "Dinner is served." We all found our assigned seats around the long, beautifully set table. It was a masterpiece of holiday tradition, with the gleaming silver, the sparkling crystal, and the enormous, golden brown turkey sitting proudly in the center. By some cruel twist of fate, or perhaps my mother's sentimental planning, I was seated between Liam and Chloe. I was a prisoner, flanked by my betrayers. The meal began. The cacophony of conversation and clinking silverware filled the room. People laughed, told stories, and passed platters of food, and the three of us played our parts. I smiled when spoken to. I complimented my mother on the stuffing. Liam engaged in a lively debate about football with my uncle. Chloe was quieter, but she managed to contribute a few words here and there, her voice thin and reedy. To anyone watching, we were a normal family. But beneath the surface, the pressure was building. I could feel Liam's knee occasionally bumping mine under the table. A desperate, silent plea. I could feel Chloe's fear radiating off her in waves. The charade was suffocating me. I felt a wave of nausea, and for a terrifying moment, I thought it was morning sickness. That I was going to be physically ill right there at the table. I took a slow, deep breath and a sip of my wine, the cranberry juice I poured for myself in the kitchen. The tartness shocked my system back into focus. It was almost time. The main course wound down, and my father stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," he said, his face beaming with pride. He raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to my daughter, Ava, and my soon-to-be son-in-law, Liam. We are so proud of the life you're building together, and we can't wait for the wedding. You two are a perfect match." To Ava and Liam. To Ava and Liam. The room chorused. Everyone drank. I raised my glass to my lips but didn't sip. This was it. This was the moment. The perfect cue. Liam was looking at me, a hopeful, desperate smile on his face. He thought they had done it. He thought they had survived the dinner. He thought they were on the path to being forgiven. He was so wrong. As the chatter resumed, my mother turned to me, her eyes shining. "Oh, honey, it's all so wonderful. Your father is right. You two are just perfect for each other." Then she looked past me to Chloe. "And Chloe, darling, I hope you find a love like this someday soon. You deserve to be this happy, too." Chloe looked like she had been struck. She mumbled something incoherent and stared down at her lap. That was the final push I needed. The casual, unintentional cruelty of my mother's words. The utter blindness of everyone in this room to the festering rot beneath the perfect surface. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly. A hush fell over the table as all eyes turned to me. This was the moment from the cold open. But now it was real. It was happening. I felt a strange sense of calm. The calm of a commander about to give the order to attack. I picked up my glass of cranberry juice. "I'd like to say something, too," I said. My voice clear and steady. The room went completely silent. Liam's face went white. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. They knew. It was over. "I want to thank you all for being here," I began, my eyes sweeping across the faces of my family. "And Dad, thank you for that lovely toast." I turned my head slightly, my gaze falling on Liam. He's right. We have been building a life together. A beautiful house. A beautiful future. Then, I turned my gaze to my sister. And I want to thank my sister, Chloe, for always being so supportive, for being so close to our relationship. The air grew thick with confusion. My parents were smiling, thinking this was a genuine, heartfelt speech. But Liam and Chloe looked like they were facing a firing squad. My voice dropped, losing its cheerful lilt and taking on a sharp, dangerous edge. In fact, she's gotten so close to Liam lately that I'm surprised she hasn't started wearing his clothes. A few nervous titters went through the room, people thinking I was making a joke. My father chuckled. "That's my girls. Always teasing each other." "Oh, I'm not teasing, Dad," I said, my smile vanishing. I looked directly at my mother. "Mom, you said you hope Chloe finds a love like mine someday?" Well, it seems she already has. She's found the exact same one. The penny dropped. The smiles on my parents' faces froze, then melted away into utter confusion and disbelief. "Ava, what are you talking about?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. I ignored her. My focus was a laser beam, pointed directly at the two people who had destroyed my life. "Tell them." "Liam," I said, my voice soft but carrying the weight of a sledgehammer. "Tell them what I saw when I came home 2 weeks ago. Tell them what you and my sister were doing in my bed." Liam just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. But no sound came out. Chloe let out a small, whimpering sound and covered her face with her hands. The entire room was frozen in a state of horrified shock. You could have heard a pin drop. The festive atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. "He won't say it?" I asked the room at large, a cruel, mocking tone in my voice. "All right, I guess I will." I came home to surprise my fiancé with some wonderful news, and I found him sleeping with my twin sister, in the bed we were supposed to share for the rest of our lives. A collective gasp went through the room. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. My father looked from me to Chloe to Liam, his face turning a dark, dangerous shade of red. "Is this true?" he boomed, his voice shaking the crystal glasses. He was looking at Liam. "Is what she's saying true?" Liam couldn't speak. He just nodded. A small, pathetic gesture of surrender. The chaos I had been anticipating finally erupted. My mother started to sob, a heartbreaking sound that tore through the silence. My Aunt Mary was whispering, "Oh my God," over and over again. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson looked at their son with expressions of pure disgust and shame. But I wasn't finished. This was only the first bomb. I had saved the biggest one for last. I let the chaos swirl around me for a moment, a conductor savoring the crescendo of my symphony of destruction. Then, I held up my hand for silence. To my surprise, the room quieted, everyone turning to look at me, their faces a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. "But that's not even the most interesting part of the story," I said, my voice eerily calm amidst the emotional wreckage. I took a step away from the table, placing a hand protectively over my stomach. "You see, when I went home that day, I was going to tell Liam something. A secret. The most wonderful secret." I looked at Liam, whose face was now a mask of ashen despair. I looked at Chloe, who was weeping uncontrollably into her napkin. And then I looked at my mother, her face streaked with tears. I was going to tell him, I announced to the silent, shattered room, that I'm pregnant. If the first revelation had been a bomb, the second one was a nuclear detonation. The word pregnant hung in the air, a shimmering, radioactive cloud that poisoned everything it touched. The sobs and whispers ceased, replaced by a profound, bottomless silence. It was the silence of utter devastation, the kind that follows an event so catastrophic that the mind cannot immediately process it. My mother made a sound, a low, guttural moan of pure anguish, and slumped forward in her chair, my father catching her before she fell. Mrs. Henderson, Liam's mother, simply closed her eyes, as if the pain of the world was too much to witness. Mr. Henderson stared at his son, his face a granite mask of shame and disappointment. But my focus was on Liam. His head shot up, his eyes locking with mine. The despair on his face was replaced by a flicker of something new, something complex and terrifying, a desperate, grasping hope. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. A baby. A baby can fix this. A baby changes everything. He thought my pregnancy was a card I had played to bind him to me. A tragic, dramatic plea for him to stay, to choose me. The arrogance of it, even in his moment of total humiliation, was breathtaking. He started to rise from his chair, his hand outstretched towards me. Ava, he began, his voice thick with a fake, theatrical emotion. A baby, we're having a baby. This changes everything. We can work through this. For the baby. The cold fury that had been simmering inside me for weeks finally boiled over. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and brittle and full of contempt. You think this is for you? I spat, the word you dripping with venom. You think this baby is a lifeline I'm throwing you? You are so wrong. I took the ultrasound picture out of my pocket, the one I had been carrying like a sacred relic, and I held it up for him to see. This baby, I said, my voice ringing with a newfound strength, is mine. This baby will have one parent, a mother who will protect them, who will love them, and who will teach them what integrity and loyalty actually mean. I turned my back on him, addressing the entire shattered room. There will be no wedding. There will be no us. Liam and Chloe can have each other. They've clearly wanted this for a long time. They can have the house we were supposed to build a life in. They can have the wreckage they created. My gaze settled on my sister, who was now staring at me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. I hope you're happy. Chloe, you finally won. You got the man. You got my life. I hope it was worth it. Chloe just shook her head, whispering no, 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 over and over again. But the words were meaningless, lost in the hurricane I had unleashed. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't want one. My part in this drama was over. I had delivered my monologue. I had revealed the final plot twist. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the dining room, my steps steady and deliberate. I could hear the chaos erupting behind me, my father's roar of fury directed at Liam, my mother's inconsolable sobs, the horrified gasps of my extended family. The sounds followed me as I walked down the hall, but they felt distant, like they were happening to someone else. I grabbed the overnight bag I'd left by the door, pulled on my coat, and walked out of my parents' house without looking back. The cold, damp air hit my face, a welcome shock to my system. It felt clean. It felt like freedom. I had just detonated my entire life, my entire family. I had caused unimaginable pain to the people I loved. But as I walked to my car, a strange sense of peace settled over me. It was the peace that comes from cauterizing a festering wound. It was brutal. It was agonizing. But it was necessary to stop the poison from spreading. I drove to Maya's apartment, my hand steady on the wheel. When she opened the door, she took one look at my face and knew. It's done, she said, her voice soft. It's done. I confirmed. I walked inside and collapsed onto her couch, the adrenaline that had been fueling me for hours finally draining away, leaving me feeling hollowed out and exhausted. Are you okay? She asked, sitting beside me. I don't know, I said honestly. I feel empty. I thought I would feel triumphant, but I just feel tired. The weight of what I had done finally settled on me. I hadn't just exposed them. I had shattered my parents. I had turned a day of gratitude into a day of mourning. The guilt was a heavy, suffocating blanket. You did what you had to do, Ava. Maya said fiercely, as if reading my mind. They didn't give you a choice. This wasn't just about you. This was about your baby. You chose truth over a comfortable lie. That's not destruction. That's courage. I wanted to believe her. I clung to her words like a drowning person clings to a piece of driftwood. Over the next few days, I stayed hidden away in her apartment. My phone turned off. I knew a storm of calls and texts would be waiting for me, and I wasn't ready to face them. I needed to let the dust settle. I needed to let the world I had known burn to the ground before I could even think about what to build in its place. The first person to break through my wall of silence was my mother. She didn't call. She showed up at Maya's door a few days later. Her face aged by a decade. Her eyes swollen and red. I let her in, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and love. We sat in silence for a long moment before she spoke, her voice raspy from crying. "Is it true?" she asked, her eyes fixed on my stomach. "Are you really pregnant?" I nodded, unable to speak. Tears welled in her eyes again. But this time they were different. They weren't just tears of pain. There was something else there. A flicker of fierce, maternal love. "Oh, my baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. My poor baby. To have to go through this alone. She didn't blame me. She didn't yell at me for the scene I had caused. She just saw her child, wounded and in pain. She opened her arms, and I fell into them, crying for the first time since the night I had discovered the betrayal. I cried for my lost innocence, for my broken family, and for the fear that was now a constant companion. "Your father, he's very angry," she said, stroking my hair. "He hasn't spoken a word to Chloe since that day. He told her to pack her things and leave the house." The news sent a shock through me. I had expected anger, but not this. "Where did she go?" I asked, a flicker of unwanted concern stirring in my chest. "I don't know," my mother said, her voice heavy with a mother's pain for both her daughters. "She tried to call, but he won't answer. And Liam, his parents took him home. I don't think we'll be hearing from them for a very long time." She pulled back, her hands on my shoulders, her gaze firm. "But you are not alone in this. Ava, do you hear me? You have me. Whatever you decide to do, wherever you decide to go, I will be with you." Her unconditional love was a balm on my raw, wounded soul. It was the first plank in the bridge to my new life, but I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. The wreckage was still smoldering. My father's anger, Chloe's exile, Liam's disappearances were all consequences of my actions. I had wanted revenge, and I had gotten it. But revenge had a price, and I was just beginning to understand how high it was. A week later, I finally turned my phone back on. It was a digital battlefield. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of texts. There were messages from my aunts and uncles, some offering sympathy, others filled with veiled recriminations for airing our family's dirty laundry in such a public way. There were angry, rambling texts from Chloe, oscillating between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of ruining her life. And then there was a single, long email from Liam. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a tirade. He accused me of being cruel, vindictive, and manipulative. He said I had used my pregnancy as a weapon to destroy him, that I had never intended to forgive him, that I had planned the whole thing. He called me a monster. As I read his words, I didn't feel anger or pain. I felt a strange sense of validation. He was right. I had been manipulative. I had been vindictive. I had planned it. He and Chloe had created a monster, and she had turned on her creators. His email was a confirmation that I had succeeded, that I had broken through his narcissistic facade and truly wounded him. I deleted the email without a second thought. He was a ghost from a past life, and I was done with hauntings. I packed my few belongings from Maya's apartment and prepared to move into my own place. The small, sunny two-bedroom that I had rented felt like a palace. It was empty, a blank canvas. It was all mine. As I stood in the empty living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. This was my new beginning. It was a beginning born from ashes and tears, but it was mine. I placed a hand on my stomach. It was still flat, but I could feel the life inside me. A tiny, persistent flutter. It was me and this baby against the world, and for the first time, I felt like we might actually win. The first few weeks in my new apartment were a blur of practicalities. There were boxes to unpack, furniture to assemble, and a new life to organize. The tasks were mundane, but I welcomed them. They were a distraction. A way to keep my mind from replaying the Thanksgiving massacre over and over. I built a crib with my own two hands. The instructions spread out on the floor. My knuckles raw by the time I was finished. I painted the baby's room a soft, calming shade of sage green. Each small act of creation felt like an act of defiance against the destruction I had wrought. I was building not just a nursery, but a new world. One where the ghosts of my past were not welcome. My mother was my rock during this time. She came over almost every day, bringing food, helping me hang curtains, or just sitting with me in silence when the weight of it all became too much. Our relationship, which had always been filtered through the lens of my rivalry with Chloe, was now more direct, more honest. We talked about her marriage, my father's stubborn pride, her grief over the schism that had torn our family in two. "He'll come around," she would say. Speaking of my father, "He's just hurt. He sees you, and he sees how much pain you're in, and his only response is anger. He doesn't know how to deal with Chloe. For him, it's black and white. She betrayed you, so, in his mind, she doesn't exist anymore." Her words didn't offer much comfort. I knew my father's anger wasn't just directed at Chloe. A part of it was meant for me, too. I had shattered his perfect image of his family. I had exposed the ugly truth he never wanted to see. One afternoon, as we were folding tiny baby clothes, my mother grew quiet. "Chloe called me," she said, her voice heavy. "She's staying with a friend. She lost her job." I stopped folding a tiny yellow onesie, my heart giving an unwelcome lurch. Chloe worked in PR. Her entire career was built on reputation and connections. The scandal had obviously spread through Portland's social and professional circles like wildfire. "What happened?" I asked, my voice neutral. "Her boss called her in. Said they had a morality clause in her contract. The story, it got out. People were talking. They let her go." My mother looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Ava, she has nothing." I hardened my heart. "She made her choice. Mom, she made a mistake." My mother countered, her voice rising. "A terrible, unforgivable mistake. But is she supposed to pay for it for the rest of her life? To lose everything? Her family, her home, her career? Is that my fault?" I shot back, the anger I had been suppressing bubbling to the surface. Did I force her to sleep with my fiancé? Did I make her lie to me for months? Everything she's lost. She lost the moment she made that decision. This is just the fallout. She's still your sister. My mother cried, her voice cracking with a mother's impossible pain of being torn between her two children. "Is she?" I asked, my voice cold. "Because my sister wouldn't have done this to me. The person who did that, I don't know who she is." The conversation ended there, leaving a cold, tense silence between us. I knew I had hurt my mother, but I couldn't take the words back. I couldn't offer the forgiveness she so desperately wanted me to give. The wound was still too raw, too deep. A few days later, a registered letter arrived. It was from a law firm. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was from Liam. He wasn't contesting the end of our engagement, but he was making a claim. A legal claim. He was petitioning for paternal rights. I read the letter 3 times, the legal jargon swimming before my eyes. He was demanding a DNA test after the baby was born. He was demanding joint custody. He was demanding to be named on the birth certificate. The letter was cold, aggressive, and filled with legal threats. The desperate, pleading man from the coffee shop was gone, replaced by a ruthless, calculating enemy. I sank onto my new couch, the letter clutched in my hand. The fragile piece I had started to build shattered into a million pieces. He wasn't going to let me go. He wasn't going to let me build my new life in peace. He saw the baby not as a child to be loved, but as a possession, a piece of himself that I was trying to steal. It was the ultimate act of narcissistic control. If he couldn't have me, he would chain me to him for the next 18 years through our child. The rage I felt was so intense it made me dizzy. I had thought the battle was over, but it was just beginning. This wasn't about love or family anymore. This was about war. I immediately called my lawyer, my voice shaking with fury as I read her the letter. "He has a right to petition." "Ava," she said calmly, her voice a steadying presence in my storm of emotion. "The courts generally favor the involvement of both biological parents, but his actions leading up to this will be a major factor. His infidelity, the emotional distress. We can fight this. We can argue for sole custody with supervised visitation, at best, but it's going to be a long, ugly, and expensive fight. A long, ugly fight. The words echoed in my mind. That was my future. Courtrooms, lawyers, custody battles. My child, my innocent baby, would be born into the middle of a war zone. This was Liam's final act of revenge. He was going to punish me for exposing him by dragging me, and our child, through a legal hell. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the floors of my empty apartment, my mind racing. I had been so focused on my own pain, my own revenge, that I hadn't fully considered the long-term consequences. I had wanted to protect my child from a world of lies, but I was about to plunge them into a world of conflict and bitterness. Was there another way? A way to win the war without fighting the battle? The thought came to me in the dark, early hours of the morning. A desperate, audacious idea that was both terrifying and brilliant. It was a gamble, a massive, life-altering risk. But if it worked, it would give me everything I wanted: freedom. True, absolute freedom. The next morning, I made a phone call. Not to my lawyer, not to my mother. I called the one person I had sworn I would never speak to again. Chloe picked up on the first ring, her voice small and tentative. "Hello, it's Ava," I said, my voice flat. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Ava, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I cut her off. "Just listen. Liam is suing me. He's demanding paternal rights to my baby." "Oh, God," she whispered. "Ava, I'm so sorry. I never wanted." "I don't care what you wanted," I snapped. "I'm telling you this because I need something from you. I need you to help me." A long silence followed. "Help you?" she finally asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "How can I possibly help you? You are the only person in the world who can," I said, my plan taking shape as I spoke the words aloud. "You know him, Chloe. You know how he thinks. You know what he's capable of. You are part of this. You helped create this mess. Now, I need you to help me clean it up." What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I want you to help me make him disappear," I said, the words hanging in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. "Not literally," I added quickly, though the thought had a certain dark appeal. "I want you to help me convince him to walk away, to sign away his rights, to leave me and my baby alone. Forever." "But how?" she cried. "He'll never do that. This is about his ego, his pride. He'll never just walk away." "He will," I said, a cold certainty in my voice. "If we give him a reason to. If we make staying more painful than leaving. You said you were sorry. You said you'd do anything to make it right. Well, this is it. This is your one and only chance to prove it. Are you in? Or are you out?" I could hear her ragged breathing on the other end of the line. She was standing at a precipice. She could continue to be the victim, wallowing in her self-pity. Or she could take a step, a terrifying step, towards some kind of redemption. This was her choice, her atonement. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. My entire future, my child's future, hinged on her answer. Finally, her voice came, no longer small and broken, but quiet and firm, imbued with a resolve I hadn't heard since before the betrayal. "I'm in," she said. "Tell me what we need to do." Forging an alliance with Chloe was like trying to dance with a ghost. The space between us was haunted by the memory of her betrayal, by the ruins of the sisterhood we once had. We met in a sterile, anonymous hotel lobby downtown, a no-man's land that belonged to neither of us. She looked worse than I'd imagined. Her usual vibrant confidence was gone, replaced by a brittle, hollowed-out look. She had lost weight, and her eyes were perpetually shadowed, as if she hadn't had a full night's sleep in months. There was no warmth between us, no tearful reconciliation. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was a business transaction, a grim partnership born of mutual desperation. I needed her help to escape Liam, and she needed a chance to do something, anything, to atone for the wreckage she had caused. "He won't be reasoned with," she said, her voice raspy as she stirred a cup of coffee she wouldn't drink. "His pride is everything. The more you fight him, the more he'll dig in. He'll see it as a challenge. He needs to believe that walking away is his idea, his victory." "So how do we do that?" I asked, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. Chloe looked at me, her gaze direct for the first time. We have to give him something he wants more than a baby he's never met. Or, we have to threaten him with something he fears more than being seen as a deadbeat dad. She paused, a flicker of her old, calculating peer mind showing through. Liam's entire identity is built on his image. The successful architect. The good guy. The man from a respectable family. That's his Achilles heel. If we tarnish the image, we destroy the man. The plan we concocted was ruthless, devious, and morally ambiguous. It felt like we were plotting a character assassination. And in a way, we were. We were going to use the truth as a weapon, twisting it and aiming it at Liam's most vulnerable points. Chloe, with her intimate knowledge of his secrets and insecurities, was the perfect architect for this demolition. Our first move was to create leverage. Chloe knew that Liam's prestigious firm had a silent partner, a powerful, old money investor who valued discretion and reputation above all else. She also knew that Liam had exaggerated certain qualifications on his resume when he was first hired. Small lies about awards he'd supposedly won in college, and his proficiency in certain design software. On their own, they were minor infractions, but compiled into a single, anonymous package and sent to the right people, they would paint a picture of a man who was fundamentally dishonest. It won't get him fired, Chloe explained, her voice clinical, but it will plant a seed of doubt. It will put him on shaky ground with the people whose respect he craves most. While Chloe gathered the evidence, my job was to play the victim, but in a very public way. I started a blog. It was framed as a personal journal, the story of a single mother-to-be navigating a difficult journey. I never mentioned Liam or Chloe by name. I used archetypes, the fiancé, the sister. I wrote about my heartbreak, my shock, but most importantly, I wrote about my determination to create a peaceful, stable life for my child, away from conflict and drama. I wrote about the pain of being dragged into a legal battle I never wanted. The blog was a masterpiece of subtle manipulation. I was vulnerable but strong, wounded but resilient. I was everything a sympathetic audience would root for. Maya helped me share the posts in online support groups for single mothers and victims of infidelity. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from strangers all over the country. My story became a small-scale viral sensation, a testament to female strength in the face of betrayal. I was building a narrative, an army of public opinion that would make Liam look like a monster if he continued his legal fight. The day we launched our two-pronged attack was nerve-wracking. Chloe, using a proxy server and a burner email account, sent the meticulously crafted dossier of Liam's professional embellishments to his boss and the firm's silent partner. That same afternoon, I published a new blog post. It was my most emotional one yet. I wrote about the difficult decision to walk away from a toxic situation, and the painful reality of having to legally defend my child's right to a peaceful life, free from the man who had shattered our family. I included a vague, but pointed line about protecting my child from a legacy of deceit. We didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Chloe got a frantic call from a mutual friend. Liam wasn't a tailspin. He'd been called into a meeting with his superiors. He was paranoid, convinced someone at work was trying to sabotage him. He had also seen my blog. His parents, his friends, everyone had seen it. He was being inundated with messages. The narrative was no longer his to control. He wasn't the wronged man fighting for his child. He was a villain in a story of heartbreaking betrayal that had thousands of followers. This was a moment to strike. I sent him a single, formal email from my lawyer's account. It proposed a meeting, just the two of us, no lawyers present, to discuss a final resolution. He agreed immediately. We met at the same impersonal coffee shop. This time, however, the power dynamic had completely shifted. He looked cornered, his handsome face pale and strained. The confident, arrogant man who had served me legal papers was gone. In his place was a man who was terrified of losing everything he had worked for. "What is this, Ava?" he began, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. "This blog, these lies about me at work, are you trying to destroy me?" "I'm trying to protect my child," I said calmly, my hands resting on my now noticeably pregnant belly. "You're the one who declared war, Liam. I'm just fighting back with the only weapons I have. The truth seems to be a particularly effective one. This has to stop," he said, his voice pleading. "My career, my reputation, you're ruining me." "Then make it stop," I said, leaning forward. "This can all go away. The blog can be deleted. The concerned friend who tipped off your boss can be silenced. All of it." All you have to do is give me what I want. He stared at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want me to sign away my rights. I want you to give our child the greatest gift you could possibly give them, peace. I corrected him. I want you to walk away. You can go on and be the successful architect. You can rebuild your reputation. You can find someone else. You can have other children. All I am asking for is this one. Let me raise this baby in a home that isn't a battlefield. He was silent for a long time, his gaze fixed on my stomach. I could see the war raging inside him. The war between his ego and his instinct for self-preservation. Signing away his rights would be an admission of defeat, a permanent stain on his pride. But not signing, continuing the fight, would mean a public, messy war that he was now positioned to lose, potentially costing him his career and his family's standing. I had to give him a way to save face. I had to appeal to the one thing he still cared about more than anything, himself. Think about it, Liam, I said, my voice softening, adopting a tone of gentle reason. What kind of life would this be? For any of us? Years of court dates, fighting over holidays, visitation schedules. Our child would be torn between two parents who despise each other. Is that what you want? Or you could be the bigger person. You could be the man who made a difficult, selfless choice for the well-being of his child. You could walk away with your head held high, knowing you did the right thing, sparing everyone a lifetime of pain. I was offering him a new narrative, not the deadbeat dad, but the tragic, noble hero who made the ultimate sacrifice. It was a lie, a beautifully crafted piece of fiction, but it was a lie his ego could live with. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. And if I do this, you'll stop? Everything stops. I promised. You will never hear from me again. I will raise our child, and I will tell them that their father was a man who loved them enough to let them go. It was the most disgustingly manipulative thing I had ever said, and it was working perfectly. He finally deflated, the fight going out of him. He looked old and tired. Have your lawyer draw up the papers, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I'll sign them. He stood up and walked out of the coffee shop, not looking back. I stayed seated, my body trembling with the release of a tension I had been holding for months. I had one. It was over. I pulled out my phone and sent a one-word text to Chloe. Done. Her reply came back a moment later. I'm so sorry, Ava, for everything. I stared at her message. For the first time, I felt something other than cold fury or calculated indifference towards her. It wasn't forgiveness. It was too soon for that. It was something smaller, more fragile. It was a flicker of understanding. We were both victims of this mess, in our own ways. We were two sisters, lost in the woods, who had finally, against all odds, found a way out. But we were on opposite sides of the clearing, and the path back to each other was still overgrown and impossibly long. I didn't reply. I just put my phone away, paid for my untouched tea, and walked out into the sunshine. A free woman. The weeks that followed Liam's surrender were quiet and strangely anticlimactic. The legal papers were drawn up and signed. His name was scrubbed from my future. A legal ghost. True to my word, I took down the blog, deleting every post, every comment, erasing the entire digital battlefield as if it had never existed. The silence that followed was profound. There were no more threatening letters, no more panicked phone calls, no more drama. There was just peace. A vast, quiet, and slightly intimidating peace I wasn't sure what to do with. My father eventually started speaking to me again. He showed up at my apartment one Saturday morning with a flat-pack bookshelf and a toolbox, his gruff way of offering an olive branch. We didn't talk about Thanksgiving. We didn't talk about Chloe or Liam. We just built the bookshelf together. The silent, shared activity a bridge across the chasm of unspoken words. As he was leaving, he paused at the door and looked at me, his eyes filled with a gruff, paternal love. You're strong, Ava, he said, stronger than I ever knew. It was the closest to an apology, and an approval, that I would ever get from him. And it was enough. My due date approached, and the reality of my situation began to settle in. I was going to be a mother, a single mother. The fear that I had held at bay with anger and plans for revenge crept back in. During the quiet hours of the night, could I do this alone? Was I strong enough? The day I went into labor, it was my mother who held my hand, who breathed with me through every contraction, her calm strength a mirror of my own. Maya was there too, a fierce and loyal cheerleader. As I lay in the hospital bed, exhausted and overwhelmed. I realized that I wasn't alone. I had built a new family. A small but powerful tribe of women who had my back. My daughter was born just as the sun was rising. Her first cries filling the sterile room with the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. She was perfect. She had a full head of dark hair and my eyes. I held her in my arms, and the last remnants of the anger and bitterness I had been carrying for so long simply melted away. They were no match for the overwhelming, all-consuming love I felt for this tiny human. She was not a symbol of betrayal or a prize in a war. She was just my daughter. My Lily. My mother and Maya left to give us some time alone. I lay there, just watching Lily sleep in my arms, her tiny chest rising and falling. The door to my room creaked open. I looked up, expecting a nurse, but it was Chloe. She stood in the doorway, looking hesitant and scared, clutching a small, clumsily wrapped gift. It was the first time I had seen her in person since our meeting in the hotel lobby. She looked healthier, the hollowed-out look in her eyes replaced by a deep, weary sadness. Mom told me, she whispered, her gaze fixed on the baby. I just wanted to see her. If that's okay. I looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the history and the heartbreak that filled the room. Then I looked back at my sister. The great, burning rage was gone. All I felt was a deep, profound exhaustion. Come in, Chloe, I said, my voice quiet. She tiptoed into the room and stood by my bed, her eyes filled with tears as she looked at her niece. She's beautiful, Ava. Her name is Lily, I said. Chloe reached out a tentative hand, as if to touch the baby's head, but then pulled back, as if she didn't have the right. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. There's not a day that goes by that I don't regret what I did. I know sorry will never be enough. I know I might never earn your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person. I'm in therapy. I'm working on myself. I listened to her words, and for the first time, I believed them. This wasn't the desperate, self-serving apology from before. This was something quieter, more humble. It was the sound of someone who had hit rock bottom and was slowly, painfully, trying to climb back up. I brought her something, she said, placing the small gift on the bedside table. It was a children's book, The Velveteen Rabbit, a story about how things become real when they are loved. The irony was so poignant it almost hurt. I looked from the book to my sister's tear-streaked face. Forgiveness was a complex, mountainous terrain. I wasn't ready to climb it yet. Maybe I never would be. But I knew I couldn't live in the shadow of that mountain forever. For Lily's sake. And for my own. I had to find a way to move forward. Would you like to hold her? I asked. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief and a fragile, dawning hope. She nodded, unable to speak. Carefully, I shifted Lily's tiny, warm body from my arms into her aunt's. Chloe held her with a reverence and tenderness that was heartbreaking to watch. She looked down at the baby, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek, dripping onto Lily's soft blanket. In that moment, she wasn't my betrayer. She wasn't my rival. She was just a woman, holding her newborn niece, a tangible symbol of a future she had almost destroyed. I didn't know what our future would look like. I didn't know if our sisterhood could ever be fully repaired, if the trust could ever be rebuilt. There were some bells that couldn't be unrung, some wounds that would always leave a scar. But as I watched Chloe whisper a soft, tearful hello to my daughter, I felt the last knot of anger in my chest finally, irrevocably untie. My life wasn't the perfect picture I had once dreamed of. It was messy, complicated, and marked by a deep, painful betrayal. But it was also real, and it was full of a different kind of love, a stronger, more resilient love that had been forged in fire. I had my daughter. I had my mother and my friends. I had a new, quiet life that was all my own. And maybe, just maybe, I was on a long, slow path to getting my sister back. Not the sister she was, but the person she was becoming. It wasn't the ending I had ever imagined. But as I looked at my daughter, my Lily, I knew it was the beginning of everything that truly mattered. The war was over. It was time to start living.